Good evening. This is Peter Colla with Spiritual Therapies with Peter and Anna Colla, the writer of the book, Heal Yourself for God's Sake and Quantum Ascension. And you may have seen me before on various Truthers shows, David Nino Rodriguez, Charlie Ward, Nicholas Van Yemen, etc. We're going to get right into it. Today, I'm going to continue with the series of the revelations revealed in the Matrix revelations that are being revealed these days. This particular show is part 3 of that group, and it's going to be, I'm going to call it the Ode to the Fallen. We'll get into that here in a minute. But first, welcome, Truthers. Welcome, Trumpsters, Trump supporters, people like myself who are looking for the truth and following the truth. Our channel here, my name is Peter Colla, as I said, and I'm a practicing medical professional. I've had the honor of working with David Nino Rodriguez, among many others. And I have put God back into the therapeutic procedure, treating with mind, body, and spiritual applications, treating the causes and not just the symptoms, all the causes. And at which time then it's possible to basically wrap your arms around miracles. We'll get into that a little bit later into the show. We'll get started right away. So again, like I said, this is called The Matrix Revealed. It's being revealed around us. This is a time of revelations. And for those who believe that we are not in revelations, then they are not seeing what is going on around us, because we are clearly in revelations. I've heard it spoken that recently that people saying, no, we're just in the pains, those the pregnancy pains that we have to go through first. Well, my understanding of those travails, as they are referred to in the Bible, they talk about signs, and especially about wars and rumors of wars that will take place. And when you see those things and diverse travesties happening in diverse places, earthquakes and changes in the weather, etc. And when you see these things, you'll know that the time is near, but it's not yet, because that is those are the travails. Those are the signs that come when a woman is pregnant. And I've had many kids, 5 children, and I have never been pregnant myself, but I went through it with my wife. And they had more than one wife, and they had, and I've been there right there when they've lived through that, as well as helped others in my practice, my medical practice, physical therapy is my practice, treated thousands of patients, and see how they go. Now, how does exactly do travails take place? They look like the birthing process. They're painful, and they look like the end times, but they are signs that they are not yet the end times. And how do they appear? They appear suddenly out of nowhere, and they're very aggressive, and then disappear. It's when those contractions they were talking about in the travails happen over and over again repeatedly and do not disappear, that then the person knows that is no longer in the travail period of the pregnancy, but they're actually in the birthing period of the pregnancy. Wars and rumors of war. We've had wars and rumors of wars. We've had various tragedies happening all over the world, of major places, tsunamis that were devastating, but then they disappear. Those were the travails. And for the people who are watching, they see that as a sign. Oh my God, the sign that the end is coming. It's not here yet, but it's coming. But now the things that we are happening The revelations speak of something else. They speak of not only these same kind of events happening, which are happening today, wars and rumors of wars, and horrific signs, volcanoes and earthquakes and tsunamis and different things that are occurring, but revelations. There is a revealing. What does the word revelation mean? It is a revealing of things that were hidden. Jesus said himself that before the Son of Man comes, all truths will be revealed, and no stone will go unturned before the Son of Man returns. Okay, that means there has to be not only these signs in diverse places, but there has to be revelations. That means things that have been hidden have to become revealed. And that's what we're going to talk about. So everybody's talking about, well, how tough it's been lately. You know, how I've been forced to make a decision. Do I quit my job, or do I in the situation of I'm a medical practitioner. I come from a medical standpoint. We're going to get into that here more with this discussion. I have colleagues who've had to, and myself included, had to make a stand, take a stand. Would we continue to propagate this lie about this and about the comorbid? I use the code so that I can put this on FluffTube. The comorbid 19 disease and the lies. Do we continue propagating the lies that we as medical professionals have clearly seen are there? Ever since this thing has come out, and it was before our illustrious president, before the election, back in 2019, it immediately became very tough for everybody. Lockdowns worldwide. What I found interesting was that every country in the world simultaneously locked down, even countries that were in the middle of revolution or rebellion. Let's take Syria, for example. And suddenly they call a cease and desist to all hostilities so that you could get off the street because of this. Not because of this, because of comorbid. Every country in the world, countries that have for centuries could never agree on two things, on the color blue, and whether to use sticks or whether to use forks in their dinner. And yet they are now suddenly agreeing about lockdown and the need for everybody in the world to go and get this. So who's it been tough for? It's been tough for Trump, that's for sure. It's been tough for anybody following the calling of God. That's who it's been tough for. The tribulation demonstrates tribulations that make it tough for people to follow God and follow their moral compass or follow what the administration is telling them they must do. Very early on in the comorbid scenario, I was called into action because many of the therapists in the area of Phoenix wouldn't go and see patients that had, they specifically wouldn't, they didn't want to see anybody. They went to the lockdown, but they would also not see anybody that had an infection. They were afraid of it. And I got a call and I was asked if I knew anybody that would. And I said, well, I'll call around, but I'll see some of those patients. And I went and saw, for a particular company, I went and saw patients who had the comorbid diagnosis. And what I found that out of about 15 or so, 20 patients in the couple of companies I was working for, helping with, so one was just volunteering, helping them out because I knew the people, is that they had one thing in common. Almost every person that had the diagnosis didn't have a single symptom, respiratory symptom, and merely had been tested positive with the testing system, as we have now come to find out, or we found out pretty early on, was not very accurate. Especially when they started testing things like avocados or beer cans, and they were also coming up positive. True fact. So, but there again, here I was also finding people who had in their diagnosis the comorbid diagnosis, yet they had a negative test from the testing. So they didn't even have a positive test. And yet they still were being locked down and treated as if they went in with something else. One particular man was a cancer patient. He went in for his chemo, and on his way home, they dropped him off at a nursing home, and he was put into lockdown. He couldn't go home. He didn't have his phone. And he was basically locked down for months with negative testing. And yet there he sat. And he couldn't even call his landlord, couldn't call anybody to tell, hey, I'm here. And, he was basically put in prison to jostle up numbers that, according to what was being reported, it wasn't true at all. Here they're talking about long lines in the Phoenix area at the hospitals, and you go down to the hospitals, and there are going to be long lines of people. They show it even on TV, except the people that were on TV being shown happen to be in heavy jackets and hats. Yet it was April and it was 90 degrees outside in Phoenix. Nobody wears stocking hats or beanies or heavy jackets and gloves in the sun out in Phoenix when it's 90 degrees. Nobody does. Yet there's on TV, they show that, ridiculous as it was. But it was difficult. The difficulty and the place where it's the calling of God is becoming difficult is as employers, as directors, as people involved, especially in the medical scenario, and then they start to get these orders to do this, but not do that. Give these medicines, but not these. And not even go with medicines that have been approved and for decades, and suddenly they are vilified and they're not even allowed to be prescribed. And they suddenly disappear off the shelves. Who is it? So people, media, educators, nurses, administrators, law enforcement, grocers, if they know that they're doing something wrong and do it anyways, they're hurting people because for money, or they're basically listening to man or to what, if they don't know, then they're guilty of one of two things, either being stupid and not researching what that's being done, or they just happen to be stupid because they can say, well, I didn't know, I was just following orders. Most of the doctors I know, at least, are smart enough to look at the ingredients of what they're prescribing to people, to secondary diagnose, to make sure that the person is not allergic to a particular part or whatever. It's common. And yet, those ingredients were suddenly not available. As a matter of fact, even the testing processes were hidden from the public, and it would remain hidden for 75 years. Well, that's been reduced now, but it was at first hidden. So you'd think, as a medical practitioner, something's going on here. I said that. So when I would treat, I'd still treat the way I would advise people, not telling them what to do, but telling them that, listen, you do what you want, but this is what I know about this, and I'm choosing not to do it, and nor will I give it. I will not give it, nor will I participate, because I know even this was not good for the persons involved. It actually reduces their resistance, but we'll get into that here in a few minutes. Didn't he say his presidency was going to be based on freeing the children? I talked about this a little bit in the last video. Well, think Revelations. Suddenly, we come to this period of time when I kind of look at myself as a normal person out there, and I had no idea that there was even child sex trafficking, uh, uh, different things going on with, I didn't even know what Pizzagate meant and any of that sort of thing until I started looking into it, and then realized, my God, this is this bad all over the world. And then to find out that our illustrious president is making it his main objective of his presidency to rid the world of this travesty. That is, in essence, the beginning of revelations. Revelations were beginning to appear when people had no clue that this stuff was happening right under their eyes. And by who? Not only was it that the acts actually are occurring, revelations of who was involved. Anybody that's been watching these truthers has heard the stories about the various people that have been accused of being involved in this stuff. And what's funny, these people suddenly, who used to be whores for the TV and being in front of the screen, have disappeared. Now, somebody came along and said that, accused me of child whatever trafficking, I would be the first one to get up on the TV and say, well, hey, that's not me. I'm not involved in it in any which way or form. But they're not even defending themselves. These people are completely gone from the front view, the spectrum, as if they're in hiding, hoping that this will all blow over. The guilty do. When the guilty do something, especially when they're being hunted, they don't come out and try to defend themselves. The guilty go and hide. And they try to hope that the hunters give up. That's the only thing they do. If it was your child that was taken, or maybe a family member or friend, or your loved one, spouse, I don't think you would be forgetting. As a matter of fact, I think if you discovered that instead of them just, it was discovered in England that there was a particular hospital that they reported a huge number of stillborn deaths, but in fact these children were being euthanized or they were being drugged, and then the mother was told that the child died, and they had an unusual amount of these babies, and then these babies would end up in the child sex trafficking sacrificial realm for their blood. Revelations, it's being revealed. These things stop being theories and they become facts. Stop being conspiracy theories and they turn into conspiracy facts. That's what Revelations is. All stones, all truths will be revealed. All participants in these horrific acts that are against the Holy Spirits. What more holy than a child is there in the Holy Spirits? And acts perpetrated against an innocent child is, in my opinion, an act against God himself. Because the child is innocent. They did nothing, regardless of what the Catholic Church might say, that we're all born into sin. And the child is innocent. Easy to label them as born into sin so that you don't have to feel remorse if you happen to be involved in that scenario. If your loved one is killed, or your family was ruined, or your business was taken from you, or your lamb that you loved, the one that you raised with your deceased wife was suddenly taken and used by some rich man because he didn't want to use one of his thousands of flocks that he had. He wanted yours. And you found out. Well, don't you think you'd start to get angry? We're going to get into that here a little bit. People have lost from this comorbid. They've lost a lot. I've lost my business. I've lost, we had to shut down. We couldn't pay our bills. Our credit is ruined. And that's just that. And, relationships, loved ones. I have friends who've lost loved ones. I know people who have gone into the hospitals with other issues and then were given this without their consent. I know one man, he went into the hospital for merely a neck strain. And then suddenly he comes out and he starts getting really sick. And he develops cancer. And he gets cancer boils all over his body. And he passes away in 6 months. And this man was an Olympic class rower, athlete. Look at all the athletes all over the world that are falling down with myocarditis. It's crazy. And yet, but yet before, every, accident, gunshot wound, it didn't matter. And you have comorbid. If you went to the hospital for anything, everybody was labeled with comorbid. Now suddenly, but it's a coincidence. Young children, young teenagers having heart attacks and myocarditis and thrombosis and different kinds of symptoms and neuropathies. Yeah. And yet, not a single comorbid strain has been isolated. Not a single variant. They keep talking about it, and they keep admitting that they haven't isolated one, even trying to isolate it in patients who've died. The narrative keeps changing, just like the science keeps changing. See, and that's the part that I have a problem with. This is the science. Either they lied to us when they taught it to us in the beginning, 30, 40 years ago, as when I was taught this stuff about virology and immunology and different things like that, or they're lying to us about now. How many people have lost their livelihoods? But turning to God in this situation, when you are put into a position, everybody worldwide is now been put into a position to either participate in this debacle or to turn away and say no. And the revelations of truths has helped them to make that decision to turn to God. There is a choice. Trust man, trust God. Simple as that. We're going to get into it a little bit more. The debacle in our livelihoods, it's been obvious, and everyone is suffering. The only people that don't seem to be suffering are the people who are working for the big corporations that are actually propagating or promoting this stuff. Oh, they're having a good old time because they're making lots of money and they're very successful in their trades on the Wall Street and with Bitcoin and all these different things, because they're doing when you're doing what the deep state wants you to do, they're going to make you successful. You're going to be the one that's going to benefit for now. The election debacle was evident. Didn't have to. I've had this in previous shows about Arizona. I'm an Arizona person. We drove around. I saw how it was. I saw the crowds waiting in line, and they were all for DJT. And they did, and yet to call it within minutes of, well before it was even closed for the other guy, was just flat out lies. The My Pillow guy comes up with all the evidence right away. It's all disappeared. You know, it's almost like people are hardly talking about it. The military being our last line of defense. Yet, revelations. It was revealed about the theft, revealed how this is going on all over the world, revealed how the machines were involved, revealed how certain people were involved, revealed that people were paid to stuff ballot boxes. Revelations. If they were completely in charge, nothing would have been revealed. But because we are in the time of revelations, everything is being revealed. And the signs start appearing as to the solutions. Laptops suddenly appear that have evidence. People suddenly get arrested and they have evidence on them of other situations that talk about this stuff. Papers and leaks and WikiLeaks and different things all start coming to the surface as if by magic. Nasara, gold being hidden in tunnels, demonstrating clearly how the controlling factions of this world have wanted to not only steal from us, but remove wealth completely so that we would live in a place of poverty. Now, I was told, I saw a show recently about the Great Depression, and the Great Depression was basically formulated. Yes, it had an effect on the markets, and suddenly they knew when the markets were going to go down, so they sold everything short and basically fleeced the market. But there were a lot of people that lost that were not involved in the markets at all. What happened was there suddenly was no money available. People couldn't pay, couldn't get money from the banks, couldn't pay their employees. They didn't have enough money for themselves to just even be able to go to buy groceries themselves. Money became scarce. Even the paper that they printed, they already took all the gold out of society. So then they started removing the actual quantities of available cash. And so only a few, only the rich had access to the money. And the very poor had less and less and less. And before you know it, they'd lose their jobs. They'd lose their ability to pay their electric bill. They lose their ability to pay anything because they couldn't even get the money to pay it with, even though it was maybe even owed to them. And then suddenly, entire systems would collapse. And the number of homeless completely increased. And the banks the banksters took all those properties and then were able to sell them or hold on to them until the values returned. It's the greatest fleecing is not just the end action. No, it is the reduction of value, like they did in the 2008 with the properties in America, reduce the values. So people's mortgages were being called in because they were mortgaged greater amounts than they had, than the properties were worth. Now, who set those values? The banks. And they decided. And then suddenly there's this flood of properties of repossessed properties, and they're being sold to the rich or even to the banksters and flipped. Flipping houses became a huge thing. Wise men once said, it is difficult to see the life when the mud is in our faces. Was that a wise man that said that, or was that me? Well, anyways, I said, it's difficult to see the light when the mud is in our faces. So you need a clean water to wash your eyes out so you can see. And the clean water comes from God. So when you apply God's blessing to your face, you can suddenly start to see. Recently, I saw a show when they talked about the ever expanding universe and the fact that it's speeding up. And then I saw another program when I saw a truther talking about the things that are taking place today and the physicality of things, and that these days are getting shorter and all of this different stuff, and the fact that well, what are we going to do? Woe is me, and all these things are happening, and their plan is this and that, and then we're in trouble because they're going to do this. Well, that was my imitation of my daughter, when she used to cry. So you might hear me do that once in a while. Very cute. She was very little when she did that. Anyway, every day is new from God. Every day is new. Let's ponder that thought for a moment. Scientists have recently discovered that not only is the universe expanding, but it's speeding up in its expansion. Well, if every day is new, let's look at that from a spiritual side. Let's look at it from God's point of view, if we can. That's what I do when I take people into Heal Yourself for God's Sake, my book, by the way, available on Amazon, is I applied spiritual truths into the healthcare, prayer, touch, water, spiritual things, and then analyzed. When I saw results that were miraculous, I would look back at how does that correlate with the Word of God? And then I wrote about it and I published it in this book. And then the second book I did, Quantum Ascension, I asked God, how does this work, God? And he tells me, he shows me, he gives me signs. He gives me, when I ask, you have not because you ask not. So I ask, and he tells. When I have a patient walk in my, and I didn't know what to do with them. Guy had half his body ripped off of him. I have so much pain. So I ask God what to do with this guy. And God shows me, tells me. And when I do it, the guy, he's like, oh, thank you. I'm not. I just ask. God explains. But from a spiritual side and from a mental side and a physical side, and not just physical. That's what I do. People still call me today. I still treat a number of patients, although a lot of the patients I treat are elderly, and they are pretty rigid in their beliefs because they've been schooled the same way I was to believe it's only physical. Got to take a if you want to get better. So every day, if God is creating a new day every day, it's like adding a day into the already present universe. God recreates he creates a new day. Every day is new, he says, the Bible says. Well, what about us? We are co-creators. As we speak out truths, good things, we create in this universe with our spoken word. There are more people today on the planet, more human beings, I heard this also in science, than have been born since the beginning man showed up on the planet. There are more today than have lived and died before. So being that it's almost 7 billion people, they calculate the total number of people that have been born and died in the 4.5 or 3.5 billion range. So there's actually many more. Kind of jostles the idea of reincarnation, because less than half of the people in the past. So if you've been reincarnated a bunch of times, well, does that mean the other guy wasn't? Is he the first time? You're maybe the 5th time? Whatever. Anyway, every day is a new day in this expanding universe. What do all of these things have in common? Medicine, health, the ever-expanding universe, there is a certain perception of what we see them and then interpret them. Now we're getting into this quantum ascension and heal yourself information. We are we are created in the image of God, but our bodies are receptors of stimuli. You get all of your information via your eyes, ears, mouth, nose, taste, feel, and then the movement. And then you interpret what you have happening around you based on your experiences and your education. So the media that tell a vision has a big part of how you interpret what you see. I recently saw a show that said that the Rothschilds, early in the 20th century, purchased all the major news networks not only of America but worldwide, at least the major contributors. And thus, everything that was reported, every ideology, every interpretation of what was going on around us had to go through their scrutiny. Big Pharma was also purchased, and the medicine. But more importantly, they all have ties to these Masons, these Illuminati factions, especially the top ones, the leaders of those groups that happen to be in every town, strategically placed into these positions of leadership or taken out of leadership, bribed, or paid off. Bribes, paid off, the same thing, but or threatened to follow orders or else. I recently saw a television program from an Australian reality TV person who had been a member of these secret societies and then basically came out and exposed it in a 5-hour show. It's very good. Most importantly, he made the connection of the organized crime, the mob, and the jesters being one of the highest levels of these controlling factions in these satanic rituals that needed to take place in order for these people to become made, as it were. A made man. You often wonder why a made man is called a made man. What has to be made? What if a sacrifice needs to be made in order for them to become a made man? I think so. This is a war between good and dark. People keep asking, 107 is one of my favorite speakers, by the way. I love 107. I hope I get to meet him someday. David Nino Rodriguez is a friend of mine, and he told me that he would someday introduce me to 107. I hope that that he keeps his promise. I hope so. And I get to meet the guy. And 107 recently has been talking a lot about health and the health conference that's coming up. I'd like to be a part of that. Hopefully he sees this and maybe he hears that I'm interested in being a part of that. I will be talking, if I am part of it in any way, shape, or form, it'd be talking about the need of inserting spiritual belief into the persons who are hoping for healing. We'll get onto that. We're going to get to that here in a minute. People keep asking Juan, what's going on? You know, is there a disclosure? You know, when is it going to happen? When's this going to happen? When's that going to happen? When's the EBS going to happen? When's the shutdown, the 10 days of darkness? Does this, that little quill, that letter, when that when is that real or not? He keeps saying, and I can understand this guy's up in the rankings of this kind of scenario. There's what he can say and what he can't say. But what is important to understand is the fact that anything being revealed at all is a miracle. And yes, even when we discover their plans that they're going to do this or they're going to do that or they're going to use this weapon or a harp or whatever, that's their plan. But as I talked about in the previous programs, they have to use curses, and that's what they do. The warlocks, the witches. By the way, the witches are always have that on. They do their curses in order to put a spiritual power onto a physical thing, an inert physical thing that actually is something maybe even created by God, and use this like a whatever, a toad or whatever, or this. Not that this is created by God, but the elements that it's consistent were created by God, the actual elements that are in it. So if curses are spoken into existence by spoken, whatever they do, or their Latin or whatever they use for their curses, how are they fought? If the spiritual realm is being used to facilitate a curse, then it's foolishness to think that you can only fight it with physical means, with a vitamin or an herb. No, you have to use spiritual weapons. That these are battles that are occurring not only in the physical, but in you're not fighting flesh and blood, but spirits and principalities of the air. Jesus said that. What exactly does that mean? When they put it in the place of a curse, even if they're cursing a Mickey D burger, the human flesh put in the burger is not enough. They have to put a curse on it as well, hoping to then get whatever their goal is from that curse. Depopulation, a number of people that they can end up taking, if that's their goal, so many thousands of gallons of blood, whatever their goal is, they put a curse to facilitate that, and then they have to attach it to an object, a ring, a burger, one of those. Now what happens, and those become the transportation device for the curse. They can't just put it out there in the space. No, they have to be transported. So they have to use, this is a physical realm, so they have to use something physical in this realm in order to facilitate that. So if you can neutralize or eliminate the curse, then all you're left with is the physical remnant that's left behind. And that's easy to fix. The physical's not enough to do it by itself. If it was enough, they wouldn't even have to bother with the curses. They would just go put the poisons out there and let them go. No, they have to attach the curse. That's why they do it. Do you understand? They have to follow order, rules. God spoke, like I said in previous videos, the last two. He spoke the things into existence, even when it comes to prophecies, things that are going to happen, blessings that are coming. They're spoken of first, and then they're repeated by his people, the good people that want these things to occur in the prophetic word. They're written down. Then signs start appearing, and people see that, and then there's choices being made. Do the people that see the signs, do they believe it or do they not? And then the actual event occurs that was prophesized. the birth of Christ, end time events, wormwood, different things, the sun, these blood moons and different things like that. And we had all these various signs in heavens that have not occurred for thousands of years, and they're occurring suddenly. And then these different things, then there is a result. In the curse realm, they have to do the same thing. They have to follow the same order if they want it to work. They can't just throw the poisons in because it's not going to work. People will find out. They'll thwart it. They'll figure out a way. They'll build up an immune system against it. You know, it doesn't work that way. They've tried many times. It just doesn't work. They have to follow the order. In the last show, the driving factor, something they can turn up or down at a whim, was what they needed to control. We talked about this, in which everyone in the world participates. I found it very strange that a few years ago, suddenly everyone in the world was being provided cell phones. People in outer Mongolia, sheep herds, they're never further away from their people than, you know, as far as the sheep can wander. Yet everybody there was this worldwide need to have everyone get a cell phone. Just like there was a worldwide need for everyone to participate in petroleum-based transportation years ago. See, what they can get when they know transportation is one of the areas that everyone participates, as well as communication, as well as medication, as well as money. And if they can take control of these entities, then when it comes time to use it for their purposes, they have worldwide control. That is something that we've only just had since the industrial time. Prior to that, people could just get a horse and they transported themselves. They could do it themselves. Even before they seized all the gold, people would just, if you went and dug gold out of the ground, you had money, or traded for gold for that matter. They didn't have control over it. Communications, even when they put up the telegram wires and even the telephone wires, not everyone used it. But now, who do you see that's above maybe 2 years old that doesn't have a cell phone in their hand all the time? They literally have everyone's communication. And we've been told these things can be turned on to monitor you even when they're turned off, and certainly can be tracked in the modern technology. Interesting. Control. Medications all have to be their medications. Even the vitamins are all produced in by their companies, oil-based for the most part, at least. And then when you have something very harmful, like a very good friend of mine my wife's had ended up having being afflicted with cancer, and immediately she was told that everything that she was taking that was healthy, she had to stop. She couldn't take green tea any longer. She couldn't take fish oil any longer. She couldn't even eat oranges or lemons, but she could certainly have sugar. Oh yeah, you could eat all the sugar you want. It's ridiculous. Now, what does quantum ascension and quantum healing say about this? I got recently on my blog site, paulorpeter.com, I had a question. What does the quantum ascension and quantum healing say about this? So let's talk about that. If we believe that all sicknesses, afflictions have a curse behind them, or at least there's a cursing kind of scenario. It could be directly from the devil, or it can be from somebody else. That you're being afflicted with something that is harmful. And when you see instead of believing that you have it, you realize you are being attacked, specifically with the curse. So when you realize that there is a curse behind this stuff, and you can turn your attention and at least with the help of God, drive the curse away, you're left with just the physical parts that are easy enough to deal with in many different ways that I explain in my Heal Yourself for God's Sake book. But basically, I'll just give it to you the simple way. The most abundant substance in this world is water, and it's probably the best healing and cleansing substance that we have available to us. And so using pure water in various ways, especially when you elicit spiritual truths with it, really becomes, you mobilize the power that God has given in the water. We can talk, I'm not going to even get into that. That's in other videos. Now, also quantum ascension, quantum healing. What does it say about that? If you let's say you have inadvertently, or you were forced to take this, you can realizing that there is a possible, there is a curse behind. They have a purpose, and that is to reduce the population. Now you haven't passed away yet. You're not afflicted now. So you turn and you say, the curse, in the name of Jesus, I ask, I'm demanding it go. I'm not afflicted with that. And then you go on to begin to remove the nefarious products out of your situation. There's many protocols out there in which you can cleanse your system. I particularly believe in the use of water, natural water. It's carbonated, so that it also helps with your acids. But I also believe in the activated charcoal, because activated charcoal removes toxins. It helps remove toxins from your body, a spoonful of activated charcoal. So that's one thing you can do. There's a lot of things you can do that your body can remove over time, these little inert physicalities that have been put into its system. Okay? What doesn't kill you makes you stronger. So your body will remove them. May even be able to use some parts of them to make you stronger. Possible. Not really sure yet, but I think so. My spirit tells me so. That what they meant for our darkness will actually end up making us stronger when we overcome. That's how we do it. We first nullify and please, but that doesn't give you a get out of jail free card. Oh, okay, then I'll just go and take it now so I can travel to Austria and go skiing, and then later I'll ask for forgiveness. Yeah, don't play Russian roulette with God or with the devil. Be my guest. I wouldn't advise it, because remember, all attacks, if you take on an attack, or you even go into the lion's den and then hope that you can have the fun of going in these places you shouldn't be, not that you shouldn't be in skiing in Austria, but I'm just saying you should be going perhaps and doing things that you shouldn't do, like going to some spirit cooking party in Hollywood so you can get some role in some movie, and then ask for forgiveness later. What you don't realize is that the attacks, if you put yourself in the enemy camp, you may not survive. You take a spin of that cylinder and take a Russian roulette bullet, like a deer hunter. and you're the unlucky one, that boom, it happens, not unlucky, you playing, then yeah. 25 years ago, science had already developed in the healthcare industry that the healthcare scenario wasn't exactly in it to help people. There were certain things that were popping up. They would deny care that would clearly help people get better faster. Companies, I had my own clinics at the time, and I would see that companies that clearly would cheat people, not treat them with therapists, but treat them with aids, and then bill it as if it did, and keep people coming and coming and coming and coming, were rewarded with more contracts. And yet companies like my own that would try to help people get better faster were actually penalized. It's like, why? You go and have companies come along and say, yeah, we want to put God into the situation, and you do that, and you even have their owners tell you that they want to do that, just to find out later when you're helping them, that you also find out that by the way, Mr. Owner, you're being ripped off. You're being charged way too much for opening these offices. I can help you open an office for under $100,000, and they're charging $350,000. Thank you. No, you get fired because you find out that the guy that is above you doesn't want that information getting to the owner. He likes it just the way it is. I have had so many of these kind of scenarios where you make a choice of doing what they're telling you, giving people these, or putting this on when you know it's not, it's unhealthy for the patient, yet pushing it, or you stand up and say, no, I'm not going to participate with that. This is not healthy for you. If you want to do it anyways, do it, but it's not healthy for you. I'm going to tell you the truth about it. There are things in this that doesn't make sense. Better to wait until we find out more about it before we go and do it and make ourselves an experiment. You got to tell them the truth. You lose your job because of that. In the medical field, I've lost mine. Or they even come after you other ways. They attack you in other ways with their other dogs, calling you names or threatening your children or doing different things, attacking your family as a way to distract you away from this other thing. It's not easy being at war, but we are at war. This is an end times war of the whole world. That's how we know we're in tribulations of the entire world, not just one country, 5 countries, 1 continent, 3 continents, everybody, all over the world, simultaneously. If it was just a few, it would have said that in Revelation. Well, in the end, there's going to be a dominant country that will be having trouble. No, it was all over the place, simultaneously, all the people that it was occurring to, these things. And that's what's going on today, as well as the revelations about what's happening all over the world, about the darkness in all sectors, not just the medicine, not just the government, not just the education, not just the media, not just the family dynamic, not just the governmental, not just the business, all sectors, not just the arts. All sectors have corruption. Not that they're completely corrupted, they have corruption in their administrative positions, in the top positions, so that when they're called upon, they can make certain demands of people. So what does quantum ascension say about this? It says, see it, not just it's physical, but look at it from a physical and experiential and a spiritual basis. And then believe that you can overcome this. And don't believe what they're telling you that once you get it, you're done. That's the lie. I have written about many people that were told they had incurable or unfixable ailments. But when they started believing, A, that was a lie, that they weren't incurable, but they could be fixed or could be healed, suddenly they were healed. It is important to see, when you start seeing that they have lied to us about this, then what else are they lying about? This goes back to, why does one person heal and one person doesn't? Very important fact. Why does it, and that was one thing that was perplexing to me as well. People come in and some people get better and some people didn't. What was the difference between these people? What did God say about that? Well, what was happening was, it's very clear even in the scriptures, when he would walk by, some people were too busy staring at the water, and some would see him and then ask, because suddenly something clicked. They started to see the truth. All truth comes from God. Jesus obviously comes from God. Truth, they see the truth and they want more. And that's when blessings start coming. So when you see the truth and God allows you to see, he knows who's going to see and who doesn't. So he calls those people who he knows are going to say yes. And suddenly we're seeing truths. These things are not new. About this is not new. About the Rockefellers and the Rothschilds, I heard about that 20 years ago. But it kind of goes in one ear and out the other. And you don't really put two and two together until you start realizing, wait a minute, they've been lying to us about everything. So maybe they're lying to us about this and about other things as well. So it goes back to, why does one person heal and others don't? Belief. It's as simple as belief. People believe and mistake that all life and death lies in God's hand. One of those mistakes. Recently we've had a very dramatic death in the Truthers movement, Kirsten W. I never got to speak with Kirsten W., which is, I wish I had. I actually mentioned Kirsten W. in this book here as one of the people I wanted to thank. And I dedicated this book to a number of truthers. Kirsten W. is also mentioned in one of them, as well as Charlie and Nino, and they're mentioned in that book. And I would have liked to have spoken with Kirsten about these things, because she was I know that she had raised hairs on some people's heads because of, I wish she raised some hair on my head. She raised some hairs because she would sometimes get a little edgy. We're at war. Not all soldiers at war are always doing exactly the best or the most honorable way of fighting. Some people have their own styles. And there are even times in war when soldiers will look upon each other and say, wait a minute, I don't really agree with what you're doing. And I don't say that we need that, but war has a lot of facets to it. And sometimes there are also, one of the facets of is there are people out there that are oftentimes a little bit more unscrupulous, or maybe a little more edgy in their way of making war, that the rest of us may not necessarily agree with, but that doesn't mean they're not on our side. I want to believe that I heard Kirsten speak Jesus's name. I want to believe that she was a believer. And I know she was a speaker of truths. And so I know that, in my opinion, that makes her basically a martyr. Now, why would I say that? That goes back to, why does one person heal and another person doesn't? We're at war. These curses are put out there to depopulate. Let's use that one. To bring the population down to 13 out of 14 people will die. That's their curse. And they propagate it with a number of facilitating physical things that they're going to use with it, including this, but maybe poisons in the air, poisons in the food, 5 this and other things, radiations, name it. A lot of precipitating factors along with this curse. Okay. And during war, good people on both sides of the war, people being used by the enemy and people being used by God for good, to reveal truths and to fight these battles, there are going to be losses. Now, why did I say that? People mistake that life and death lies in the hands of God. I've often heard people say, well, when a person dies, God decides when everyone dies. So obviously God didn't want, that person was done, their job. They did their job on earth. I would agree that when a person dies, especially if they die of natural causes or maybe in some kind of car accident, they are, that is so, that God has used them for their purposes. But I would also put as against that when a person is murdered, that is not necessarily God's will that they die. I believe, this is me, that's why it's spoken against in the 10 Commandments, thou shalt not kill. Because we take God, we basically, as people, if we decide to murder someone or kill somebody, we decide when they die. So that is a direct assault of that person wanting to become God, or basically you have the right to decide life and death rather than God. And that's why I believe it's forbidden. And I believe in wartime, or in the case of Kirsten, it's exactly the same thing. I have heard from many sources here in the Phoenix area that when people go into rehab centers or into hospitals, they're automatically given this, whether they want it or not, whether they refuse it or not. And they can easily give it to them in an IV bottle without them even knowing it. And they justify it because they say, well, you've signed a release, so you are agreeing to take everything that we feel that you need. If they feel you need it, they're going to give it to you. How do I know this? Because I've been to these facilities and they said, if you haven't had this, you can't come in. Well, if they're telling me that, then they're certainly doing that to the patients who are coming in. And I've also heard it from staff members who said, yes, they're doing that. They're administering it without their knowledge. And perhaps that's what happened to that one man I'm talking about, the rower. We don't know for sure, but I believe that their family is trying to find out. But even if they go and they administer without your knowledge, and you happen to get the one batch that is the dead one, is that God's will that you died? Or is it that they killed you because you didn't want to get this, because you don't believe that God needs to do this in order for you to live a healthy life? So you believed with your belief system, you become a person who stands up for those truths, and then they give it to you anyways, and you die. In essence, they've killed you. Okay. Commonly in the scenarios of this end times war that we live in, we are seeing more and more evidence that what people want to do, or what their free will, is being taken away from them in every aspect, even in their speech today. But at the same time, it's being revealed to the public. These things are being revealed. So as more and more revelations occur, and there are people out there who are going to fall because of being murdered by them. But if you're murdered by the enemy and you fall in the actions of God, then you have died a martyr. You are dying basically in the service of God, like being a hero in the war. All medal, most of the Medal of Honor winners died in the act of duty, usually trying to save someone else. And they receive the Medal of Honor for that, and it's usually done after they're dead. Some people manage to live, but the majority of them, the majority of Medal of Honor winners, died in the action. And there's no greater honor than to die, to give one's life for God or for someone else. God says that himself. Finally, what do we do about it? What do we do about it? I've already talked about what you can do. There's various things you can do. You can identify that there's curses here in these actions. Just by seeing that, you can, and if you need any help, try to figure out how to turn off those curses, check out those books. And if you even want a signed copy, you can order one directly from me, posture.is.everything@gmail.com. And I will send you just have to pay for the book and I will send you a copy. But at the same time, you can, what do we do about this stuff now? Once you learn these truths, once you see them as truths, what is your responsibility? What does God say? What does he say in the Word of God? Again, I go back to the Word of God. And Jesus would come along and say something to somebody, and they would be healed. They'd ask him, they'd show their desire. What can I do for you? He said, well, I'd like to be able to see. Okay, and Jesus does something, and he goes and tells them, now go wash in the Jordan, or go, tell the temple, tell the authorities what God did for you today. There's an action that follows. Okay. Recently, we've had a lot of truthers. One of my favorites is David Nino Rodriguez. He gets on there and he starts telling everybody about what's going on and what their plans are, and he gets mad. And you know what? And people often criticize him, so you shouldn't get so mad. That's not good, and you're getting all mad. Oh, wait a minute now. What does the Word of God say about this? Jesus comes into Jerusalem. He's being proclaimed a king. Goes to the temple. And then he suddenly sees, and he starts turning over the money changers' tables. Funny that he turns over the money changers' tables. He doesn't turn over the idol worshippers' tables, or the pigeon sellers' tables, or the pig farmers' tables, or even the slave traders. He doesn't turn, or the tax collectors. He doesn't turn over theirs. When he goes by and sees a tax collector, he'll turn it over the table. But he turns over the money changers' table. He turns it over, flips it over. No stone will remain turned, that will not be turned over. No secret will be revealed. Turned over. Rock, even the stones are turned over to reveal their secrets. Turned over. Is he revealing the real secrets behind the darkness that sits in the money lender's situation? And that's why he picked the money lenders and why he got so mad about them, because they can enslave anybody that gets into their grips. And that's what we found today. Jesus turned over the money lending tables. Money lending, it's forbidden to lend money and to charge interest. You know, they not only charge you a fee, they charge you interest, and they basically make people into slaves by lending them money. And all they're doing is lending paper that they produced. And we're exchanging our laborers for their paper, and then they lending that paper to us, to our government, and charging interest to our government and charging interest to us. How interesting is that? And then they hide gold. You want to ruin a society. The fastest way to ruin a society is to remove the majority of its wealth from it. You know, you saw that, so I talked about it in recent times, but I had this almost vision from God. Deb's, I was trying to understand, well, how does exactly that work with the gold? And God shared with me, and he said, imagine that all the lands in the world, Africa, Asia, Europe, America, South America, are families. Just imagine. So try to imagine that. And then imagine that each family, they all do the same thing. They have farms. Each produces a crop. And in America, the governing group, the kings, self-proclaimed kings and rulers, out of the production of all the foods that the people and produce that the whole country produces, they take 80%, 90%, and they leave 10% for the people. So the people have to get by on 10% of their, well, think about it. They tax everything. They tax your income. They tax your sales tax. They tax the people who make who distribute the product. They tax the person who transports the product. They tax the person who manufactures the product. They tax the person who manufactures the parts that the parts that they're using for it. And they tax the person who mines the stuff. And they tax all the people who work in those organizations. Tax. So they're removing literally the majority. Now, are they putting it back into society? You look at these during the gold rush in San Francisco and other places, the people would mine the gold out, but then they would turn around and use the gold right away and buy, go to the saloons or the brothels or buy, build themselves a house or build themselves a school or go into other businesses, and they would put it back into society and it would circulate and the entire society would grow. But if they remove 90%, you're left with 10. 10 here. Europe, 7. Asia, 5. Africa, 0.01. So those poor people have all of those resources removed from them. And it's not recirculated back. It's taken somewhere else. It's not taken to Europe and circulated there. No, you know what it is? It's stuck in gold and shoved underneath the ground so that society can be starved. And the only ones that benefit, them. They're the money lenders. And they have the purpose for all of this is control and enslavement. They've created a matrix of lies and deceit around us. And we are just now starting to wake up. People are, because it's being revealed. And God is revealing to us, to you, to my brothers and sisters, giving you the ability to not only see it, but to understand it. That's the red pill. That's what the Matrix was all about. That's what taking the red pill is. Deciding to see truth. And then what's your responsibility? Go help others see truth. Pass these videos on to others. Share them, not because of me, because of the truths. So people won't be afraid that there is things they can do about this. That they don't have to be afraid. They don't even have to be mad if they get mad about it. You find out the truth, of course you're allowed to be mad about it. And realize where this stuff really is coming from. The money changing tables. The money changing tables are the ones who created this matrix. Those lenders are the ones who've done this. That system has to be completely removed. Nasara talks about that. And I hope for God's sake it's true. Seems to be. We'll see. I hope you enjoyed this video. I hope you like and subscribe this. I hope if one of you knows 107, you'll pass this information on to him so I can meet this guy. I'd like to get in contact with him. I tried to get some contact with him so that I can maybe be a part of that health symposium that they're doing coming up in Dallas. I just would like to even be a part of that if possible. And if nothing else, if you had a favorite person that you like to watch, maybe ask them if they want to talk to me about it, and I'll do a show with anybody who wants me to do it with. And you can contact me through our website at gems-health-and-wellness.com or at posture.is.everything@gmail.com is my email address. You can contact me that way too. Either to get in touch with me, to maybe even have your own personal health and wellness session where I can talk to you about it. I do that with a few people. Or to get a signed copy of our book. We don't monetize our channel, so the only revenue we get for this stuff is via the sale of these books right now. They're being sold on Amazon. I have another book that I'm going to be coming out with soon. That is for autistic children, using mind, body, and spiritual therapy to help autistic children be cured. And I've seen it. And so I'm going to be releasing that book very soon. You can contact me if you want interest in that. Anyways, bless you. And I hope to talk to you soon. And this one has gone a lot longer than normal. Be blessed, and I'll see you all in the next video. Take care.